As you've heard, my name is Ken Mbugua, and it is such a privilege to be here with you all. I snuck a look behind me, over my shoulder, to your faces as we were starting, and I get the privilege of looking at you and all these precious souls. It's an amazing thing that every single face in this place represents a soul that is more precious than the whole world put together. Ever thought about that? That's what Jesus said, right? That every single human being, right, in this place, if it was just 3 of you, right, that I had come here to talk to, what a privilege that would be. So thank you for taking time to sign up for MYC this year. No, not only from myself, but from everybody else who's been laboring behind the scenes to prepare for you, that you would have not only just a fun time, because that's what those who have been preparing really desire to do you. They desire to do you all manner of good, physically with food that's been prepared or games that are there, and spiritually as well. In the prayers that have been prayed, the songs we have just sung, so much work has gone into serving you, and it is our privilege to do so. As we are beginning, can I ask you a question? I want you to take time to answer this. What's your dream? What is your dream? Are you thinking of the answer? I'm not going to tell you the answer. You're the one with the answer to this question. What's your dream? I think it's a really important question. It could be a big dream or a small dream. Oh! Yeah. Sorry, the pastor from Nairobi came with heavy things. Let's tighten this guy up properly. There you go. Now it will work. You know what? Let's put the Bible here. Trust me, I'm reading from the Bible and I read from... This works. Let's set my clock here as well. Be mindful of time. It could be a big dream. Some of you are still at the age where you're saying, when I grow up. I know, a little this. What is it? Is it you dream to marry a certain kind of person? They'll complete you. A guy with dimples. If I get that, life is set. Is it a place you want to live? I'm not from around here. But maybe as you're moving around, maybe as the taxi drives past a particular neighborhood, you look out the window longingly at that neighborhood. And you look in and you maybe even see people driving out of those neighborhoods, and you look at those faces and you dream, if only I could be that person. Is that it? How much money you could make? Is that your dream? To make a lot of money. That money thing is normally a funny thing. When you're at your age, you think this is a lot of money. And then when you get that money, you think, oh, I knew nothing. The bills are so many more. And then you just keep pushing that up. Is that your dream? Maybe your dream is something different, what people will say about you. You dream for particular reputation. You dream for people to look at you a certain way, people to admire you. When they revere me, when they talk about me, that's your dream. You'll have arrived when you get that kind of attention. Maybe that kind of respect. Maybe it's not many people, maybe it's one person. Maybe you're living to prove someone wrong, to show them something. Maybe your dream is to get out of your home. Well, some of you might come from broken homes, maybe even very bad homes. I mean, do you have a simple dream? Don't care about fame or a lot of money. You just can't wait to get away from someone, because that person represents everything evil in your life. You look at them and you think about them and you think, if only I can go as far away from this person as possible, I'll be living my dream. If I never again have to see your face. Maybe you want to really forget something that's even happened to you. What is your dream? A different way to ask this question is, what do you think your dream will solve? What do you want your dream to give to you? These are important questions, friends. You and I are constantly living for something. The question is, what is that thing? Don't assume because you're a Christian, you have the correct answer. Don't assume because you're the one preaching this message that you have the correct answer. I'm not asking for a cerebral question, a question from your brain. Don't know if you guys do this. In Kenya, we know how to give the correct answers. Then you're done. I was right. That's what I'm asking. I'm asking what's here. Another way of asking all these things, maybe in a more biblical way, is what is your hope? What have you set your hope on? We don't have much time together, but I want to give you the correct answer so that you can work together with me. My aim in all that I will say will be one thing. I hope that I can help you singularly set your hope in Christ. That's a big way of saying it. If I flesh that out more with all the talks that are ahead of us, is I will be laboring hard from the text to set your hope in the death and resurrection of Jesus. If you allowed me to flesh that out even more, I would say this to you. I am working to help you set your hope in the new creation that Jesus Christ has brought into being through his death and resurrection. Any other hope you have that is outside of that hope is a false hope. Can I say that again? Any other hope you have. That's a big little thing I'm saying there. It's little words, but it's a big claim. Anything else you're hoping in that lies outside of that hope. Which hope? The hope of a new creation brought about by the death and resurrection of our King Jesus. Any other hope outside of that is a false hope. It's advertising. You know, nobody's just trying to sell you clothes. They're trying to sell you life. Dress like this and you will have real life. Now you're living. You're wearing Louis Vuitton, whoever that guy is. Drive that car. And now you're living. If your car is making noise, what kind of life is that? This is life. Live in this neighborhood, own a house, have a pool in the backyard, marry, get this kind of makeup on your face and look like this. Hit a certain number of... Nobody's offering you those things. People are offering you life behind those things. Get famous, be well known, preach at a conference with some, it doesn't matter. Life, life, life. Hope, hope, hope. Hope is found in one place alone. So that's why we're talking about Adam today. We've read from the book of Genesis in chapter 1. But let me ask you a question. What is the background of the book of Genesis? Who was the book of Genesis written to? Who was the book of Genesis written to? If we are going to understand the contents of the book of Genesis, it's important that as we are reading it, we keep in mind the background of this book. So that's point number one if you're writing notes. So that if your neighbor sleeps, they can ask you for your notes and you can help them get what they missed. The background of the book of Genesis. I say this quickly. The background of this book is going to be understood when we understand who its author is. Who is the author of the book of Genesis? Moses. Moses is the author of the book of Genesis. So wherever you are in the Bible, right? The Bible talks, right? If you want to understand what it is you're reading, you want to ask some basic questions. Who wrote this? Is a very basic question to ask. Number one. Number two, what was going on? If you're walking through the Psalms and you're reading a Psalm, there's those things at the very top, right? That sometimes tell you exactly what was going on. This was written by David when he was running away from Saul. So that as you're reading the Psalm, you have an understanding, that's why he's saying this. Oh, this letter here was written by Paul while he was in prison. So that when he's saying rejoice always, you go like, wow, he's saying rejoice always? That means that even when you're in prison, you might still have cause to be able to rejoice. Who wrote it and what was going on is important. You already have a big understanding of what is going on in the book of Genesis because you know it's Moses who wrote it. And we meet Moses in the book of Exodus. So as we are walking through the book of Genesis, it's important to keep that story of Moses that runs all the way from really Exodus all the way to the book of Deuteronomy in mind and understand what's going on with Moses as you're reading the book of Genesis, and you're going to be greatly aided. What you're going to notice is especially the things that go down in the book of Exodus are going to be huge in your understanding what is being written in the book of Genesis. The narrative, particularly of Moses leading the children of Israel through the sea as he's being chased by Pharaoh. That imagery will be key in the life of Israel and will be repeated over and over and over in the Old Testament. But you're going to see that same idea of salvation being repeated again also in the book of Genesis. As we are walking through the book of Genesis, you're going to be noticing things we call allusions. Say that word back for me. Right? Where you're being shown something here that's kind of a picture that's hearkening to, that's pointing back to another idea. So as you're reading the book of Genesis, you want to be asking yourself, when the people who are reading the book of Genesis are reading it, what imagery, what ideas would they be able to draw connections to as you're walking through? And you're going to be seeing that the things that are happening in the book of Exodus, there's a lot of allusions to those things in the book of Genesis. Can I say this? Allusions are different from another big word called allegory. Allegory is when I decide, oh, you know what? That lamp, look at the back there, everybody at that lamp. That lamp stands for Mr. Mbugua. And I will decide the green door there, the green door stands for life, because green is life, right? And I just assign meanings to things, and I create my own story. That's not what's going on. When you're reading the book of Genesis, you're asking, what would the person reading here have been able to understand from the information they already possessed? What connections would they be making? And we are saying this, that from the book of Genesis, you will see a lot of allusions being drawn to the story of salvation as it is laid out in the book of Exodus. Notice this, for example. Go quickly to Exodus in chapter 1, and let's read a few verses here together. We just had our sister read for us from Genesis in chapter 1. And I want you to tell me if you hear any ideas repeated. I'll just read this verse number 7, and I'll ask you if you hear any words being repeated in the chapter we read in Genesis chapter 1. Exodus 1. But the people of Israel were fruitful and increased greatly. They multiplied and grew exceedingly strong, so that the land was filled with them. Did you hear any of those ideas in the book of Genesis? Where did you hear those ideas? Referring to what? Because it's just like Kenyans. This is how we answer questions in Kenya as well. Somebody tell me. Genesis chapter 1, what did we hear? Beef. Yes, sir? So in Genesis 1 already, Adam was told to be fruitful and to multiply and to do what with the earth? Fill the earth. You're already seeing some of those ideas popping up right here at the very beginning of the book of Exodus. These kinds of allusions are filled in the book of Genesis. All over the book of Genesis. That will start helping you understand why Moses is choosing to say the things he says the way he says them, or why Moses is choosing the particularities of the people's lives, of Adam and of Jacob and of Joseph and of Abraham. Why is he choosing to tell us these particular things? Because he wants us to understand one grand idea. And that grand idea is going to be he wants us to place our hope in God's promised seed. He wants us to place our hope in God's promised seed. There is no hope anywhere else. Trust in God's promise that he will bring about his promised seed, and when his promised seed comes, all will be good. If you read the book of Genesis as a scientific book that is trying to argue against atheists and evolutionists, you have already lost. That's not who Moses is writing to. Moses is writing to a people who are being delivered from Egypt, going to the promised land, and he wants them, when they get to the promised land, to believe that there is only one hope. Don't go and chase idols. Don't go and become like the people of the land. Hope is found in God's promised seed, and God's promised seed alone. That's why this book is being written. And so, as he's giving you imagery of where creation begins from, do you notice where creation begins from? Go to the very beginning of your Bible. You should be able to find this easily. Genesis in chapter 1. In the beginning, you should memorize this. God created the heavens and the earth. And listen to how he describes this. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the what? Of the deep, of the water. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Are you hearing how he's describing the beginning? The beginning is describing it as dark. He's describing the Spirit as hovering over the face of the waters. If you are, again, reading this book as this apologetics of, hey, so what was existing there before the beginning, you're reading it wrong. You should be reading it as a child of Israel who is being set free from Pharaoh and Egypt and going to the promised land. And that's why Moses is using language of what it looked like before creation. And Moses is saying it looked like chaos. You bring in modern science, and that's how you're reading this. You just wait. How was there water before creation began? Does that mean water exists? No, now you're asking. You're not taking your 21st century questions and stuffing them into the book of Genesis and chapter 1, and you're forcing Moses to be writing to modern day evolutionists. That's not who he was writing to. He's writing to the children of Israel, being set free from Egypt, to be taken to the promised land, to help them to keep their eye on the one true God and the one true God alone. And the picture of salvation that you're seeing in the book of Exodus is of God parting the what? The waters. And saving his people through them and out of them onto the other side. The book of Exodus will be speaking about how God is bringing about, so to speak, a new creation, a new people for himself. And out they come from the waters. No surprises then that the allusions being given to you in the story of creation originally, that the way Moses chooses to order that story is in a particular way. Do you know if I was to write the story of how you woke up this morning until you came here, I would have like 100,000 words to say? So that if I chose to just say what it is I'm saying, I would be highlighting only the things that are important because of what I'm trying to communicate, of why you arrived late. So I'm ignoring a lot of things of they opened their eyes and they turned their head left and then they yawned. And then they lifted up their hands and then they stretched. And then they wiggled their toes. And then they turned. Are you getting what I'm saying? What about the story of creation? Can you imagine the endless number of details Moses could be Why is he recording what he is recording? He is pointing to the fact that this God alone can save. So he's ordering that story in a way that will help them see this God that way. So he's articulating what was there in the very beginning. And the picture of water for the Jew is the picture of chaos. These were not seafarers. The waters they left for other people. That was a picture of death and danger and disaster and everything bad. But look at what this God does. In the beginning, there's darkness and there's water. And you see what God does? Out of that chaos, do you know what he brings out of that chaos? Order. Life. Who is a God like our God? You give him darkness and he brings out of it what? Light. You give him disorder and he brings out of it what? Order. Only this God can do that. Friends, if you're going to understand the story of this creation right, you need to understand that disorder is what this world is defined with. Chaos. Darkness. I wonder what that looks like in your life. I don't know any of you guys. I've talked to a couple of guys on WhatsApp. But I know your life has been touched by this kind of darkness that the scriptures are writing about. One form or another, your life has been touched with it because you're human. What does it look like? And what do you think will help you escape it? Is that why you're studying so hard in school? Keep studying hard. Don't go tell your parents, you know, I used to study hard. And then I went to MYC. That pastor really spoke to me. That was really me. So, mom and dad, I quit. Don't give us trouble. But is that why you're studying really hard? You'll notice that you'll keep studying hard, you might get amazing grades, and then you'll get out of school, you'll keep working really hard, and you'll get your first job, and then you will work like crazy, and you will get promoted, and you will rise up and up and up, and then you will find that, you'll start getting this, and then you'll keep, and then you'll keep, and you'll keep, and when you look at your life, you'll realize this is not fixing the chaos. It's not fixing the darkness. In fact, what I'm realizing is the harder I try and do this by myself, the worse of a mess I make. The only hope that you have is singular. It's in the promised seed that God has given to us as a fallen humanity. That's not all Genesis is going to tell us. You saw the portion we read, right? The portion of scripture we read spoke about some amazing things. It spoke about the creation of Adam, but do you notice? It doesn't just say Adam creation as though everything is equal? The story of Adam gets another whole chapter. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Chapter 1, we finished the story of creation. So what are we doing in chapter 2? Double clicking on Adam. Tick, tick. This is where it's all at. Because if you're going to understand what Moses is writing, you need to understand what the promised seed will look like. And this will become clearer when you get to Joseph. Because Joseph, if I can steal the stuff from in front there, you'll have forgotten because none of you are writing notes, right? Joseph will be described in ways that go beyond Israel. Joseph will be described in very Adamic level language, where you go like, this dude is sounding like he is ruling the entire world. What's up with that? I thought Israel was about, a particular part in the Middle East. That's not what Joseph is doing, because we're being told when the promised seed comes, he will look just like this. But you see in chapter 2 then how beautiful the place is where he's put? Oh, we don't have time to read all of it. But you're told of how glorious that land is in verse 5 of chapter 2 going onwards. There's no bush in the field. It was yet in the land, and no small plant of the field had yet sprung up, for the Lord had not caused it to rain on the land. And then he places him in a garden called Eden. My first daughter is called Eden. So whenever all my kids have biblical names. So when they're in church, whenever their names are mentioned, that's when they start listening to the sermon. They still think it's about them. Judah is my youngest. It goes like, yeah. This is about me. Now I should listen. Pray that the Lord would save their souls. Place in Eden, and Eden is just described as everything. Every precious stone, rivers flowing out of it, plenty. But then it's also described in very temple-like language. Rivers flow, right, from, you've never noticed? Do your rivers flow up here? Rivers typically flow what? Down. So you're being told already Eden is kind of this elevated place, right? Kind of a hill or a mountain. And you'll notice in the rest of the history of Israel that temples are normally set up on mountains. And you're told in this Eden that God is there because they walk with Adam and they speak, Adam and Eve, and they just speak. This is the dwelling place of God himself. It's a place that has no flaw. It's a place that is filled with bounty. All manner of trees that are given to them, and they can eat freely from all of them. But quite importantly, in relation to what we're talking about today, Adam is placed there, and he is made the vice regent, the deputy king of God, if you so please, overseeing everything. Overseeing what? Everything. Portion we read this morning was about how he would be exercising dominion over absolutely everything. And in his exercise of dominion, he was supposed to multiply and fill the earth with image bearers to the very corners of this earth. Not only are we told that God is acting in a world that is filled with chaos and darkness, that's what sin has caused, but you're told when God's done with this job, it will have a human king overseeing it all. What is God's plan? Let me put it this way. The prototype, you know what a prototype is? It's like when you have those big fancy buildings coming up, right? They're going to be 75 stories high, but they first of all build a little toy. It's like this, and it shows you this is what it will, and then you'll bring your car here, and then you'll park over there, and then this is where there'll be trees, So give us money, and we'll give you the real thing, a prototype. Genesis chapter 1 and 2 lay out for us what a prototype of God's eternal plan is. Where is this story going? We're just beginning here. You know, we have a long way to go in this novel. It's an amazing one, guys. It's an epic. This is where we are going. When God's eternal plan is done, all of the earth will be under the rule of his appointed human king. That's where we are going. When the story is done, all of the earth will be under the rule of God's appointed what? Human king. That's the plan in a miniature. Look at him in the Garden of Eden. God has created the heavens and the earth, and he has placed his king on his hill to rule over the earth. That's the plan. So you know how this story goes. Does it work? It completely works. What's wrong with you guys? Does God ever fail? Adam fails. Adam fails. But you and I know that God did not fail. God, who sees the end from the very beginning through the life of Adam, he has given to us a clear picture of where all of this is supposed to go. Go to the book, the New Testament, and let's see a couple of pages here. Go to the book of Luke first, so that you see God's plan from the very beginning, what it was. This is Luke in chapter 3, and this is the genealogy. You guys love genealogies? They are so much fun. The book of Genesis has 10 of them. 10 of them. So that you can go and tell people you learned some Hebrew. They're called Toledot. They're all important, guys. They're all important because you remember what the book of Genesis is about? It's about God's promised seed. And so all of those genealogies are tracing him. And we keep asking, is this him? Is this him? No. Is this him? No. Because we know that when God's promised seed is placed where he belongs, the rule of God will fill the earth, and we will enter into that Eden-like end for which we were created. So that you who are sitting here need to know that not only has chaos marked your life, death and sin, but also that God made you for the consummation. God made you for glory. That the thing every human being was created for was a world where his promised seed was lovingly ruling over everything. And as we say in that confession, and everything flourishes under that loving rule. That's what you were made for. That's what you were destined for. That longing you feel in your heart cannot be satisfied by wearing Louis Vuitton clothes. That's not what you were made for. That longing you're feeling in your heart could not be satisfied by every boy thinking you're the most beautiful girl who ever existed. And they saw you and they just went like, so amazing. All those are just false hopes. The greatest ministry ever, Ken Mbugua, or the gospel ministers who are here, none of those things is what you are made for. You were made for God. And to dwell in a world where his chosen seed was ruling over everything. So when the New Testament arrives in the book of Luke, you're told he has arrived. Listen to this story. We're not going to read the whole genealogy. You're spared by time. Chapter 3, verse 23, Jesus, when he began his ministry, was about 30 years of age, being the son, as was supposed, of Joseph, the son of Heli, the son of Mattatha. Skip all the way down to verse 38. The son of Enos, the son of Seth, the son of who? And who was Adam? The son of God. Have you ever heard Adam being called that before? Adam is called the son of who? But who is the Son of God? Because Jesus is the promised seed. And when that promised seed comes, his rule and his reign will be what you saw in that prototype of Adam over all the earth, perfectly extending the rule of God. And just so you know that Luke is intending to make that connection, just before that genealogy we have just read, Jesus appears as John is baptizing, and a voice appears from heaven saying, "This is my son." Go all the way to the book of Romans and hear what is explicitly stated here. Romans in chapter 5. This is verse 12. Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men because all sinned. For sin indeed was in the world before the law was given, but sin is not counted where there is no law. Yet death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over those whose sinning was not like the transgression of Adam. Romans chapter 5 and verse 14. Who was a type of the one who was to come. What was Adam? Adam was a type of the one who was to come. Here's what's interesting with that. Jesus did not come merely because Adam failed. As though if Adam had succeeded, Jesus would not have had to come. No. Adam was created and placed in the garden and given a rule and reign that was always pointing to something greater than him. The design is not sin and the fall, but the design is an Adam who rules over everything. And so when Jesus comes, Paul says he is the antitype. This is the one to whom that type was pointing. Friends, we could go to 1 Corinthians in chapter 15 and see the exact same thing. But quite importantly, when you look at the very end of the scriptures and you get to Revelation in chapter 5, go there as we wrap up this sermon. You'll see what the picture looks like. It's maybe my favorite chapter of all the Bible. Revelation chapter 4 and 5 are epic. Revelation 4 has that image of Christ really sitting on that throne. Because we're told the Father is a spirit and no one has ever seen him. Here we have a picture of one sitting on his throne, and listen, everything is worshiping him. And there's those creatures that are called living creatures are around him that are representative of every living creature. And they're worshiping him. And the elders, they're called the 24 elders, are worshiping him. And you know, there's 12 disciples and there's the 12 tribes of Israel who are going to be shown much more clearly at the very end of the book of Revelation, appearing on that city where the stones have the names of the 12 disciples and the 12 tribes of Israel, representing all of God's people in the Old and the New Testament. And you know what the 24 elders are doing? They're also doing what? Worshipping him. The world has been brought to its ultimate goal. And the question is how? How will it get here? Because there's sin. Are you aware of your sin? There's brokenness. Is your life looking awesome? Just watch the Lego movie with my kids and there's a cartoon there that says everything is what? Everything is awesome. It's like, no, it's not. This guy's not read Genesis. And John is saying everything is not awesome. Because here, you see the plan we laid out? God's chosen seed ruling over everything. John knows all he's experiencing down on earth is trouble because there's persecution going on. Life is not good. And in chapter 5, it says, Then I saw in the right hand of him who was seated on the throne a scroll written, within and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a mighty angel proclaiming with a loud voice, Who is worthy to open the scroll and break its seals? And no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll or to look into it. And I began to weep loudly. You know what this scroll is all about? It's the book of Revelation. It's a bringing to culmination, to conclusion, the plan of God. What plan of God? To establish a kingdom for his son. where that promised seed is established and everything is under his loving rule. Who can redeem this world? Who can conquer the chaos and death of this world and bring about God's plan to cause his people to flourish under his loving rule? And no one was found anywhere, not in heaven, not on earth, not under the earth. And what does John begin to do? Weep. Have you ever had a man weep? Not a boy. A man. Not cry, not sob. What? Weep, that's pain. It sounds like something is dying. It's like that's the sound of something alive. It's like an animal being slaughtered. It's hopeless. John is weeping because no one has been found anywhere who can bring about God's plan. And then what is he told? This might be the best words in the Bible, isn't it? Weep no more. Weep no more. Or I could read that all the way back to Genesis in chapter 1. Chaos and darkness? How does life come out of this? The promised seed. The promised seed. He will be established and he will rule over everything. That's the ultimate picture. God is beginning to paint in the book of Genesis those early brushstrokes, but you hear me right. They are all painting one image, and that is of our King Jesus. Weep no more, for the Lion of the tribe of who? Of Judah. We'll get to him in Genesis, has conquered. And how does the chapter 5 end of Revelation? Everything is worshiping him. Worship begins from the throne and it just keeps expanding out and further out and further out. And by the time you're done with chapter 5, all creation is filled with praise and glory to this God. It's almost like, the earth has been filled with image bearers. And everything is under the rule of this God. What do we need? We need a king like Adam. We don't need a chief over just my village. You don't need just a president over South Africa. And you don't know who your current hope is. He's going to let you down. Sorry to break your hearts. He's not the answer to the hope that you were created for. I hope you get a better one. Share some with us in Kenya if you can. But I tell you what our hope is. Our hope is King Jesus. And we live in a time where he came and he died and he rose again. So as we speak, we are speaking about a new creation that has already begun. Is that who you're hoping in? Is that who you're hoping in? Or is your life gripped with false hopes? I'm praying that the Lord does work in your heart, and mine as well, today, by lovingly exposing those false hopes and pointing you to Jesus and granting you faith in him and him alone.